together. So last week, all the FBS commissioners and Notre Dame's athletic director, dude, can I tell you, every time I do a story on this playoff, and I have to tell you that all the commissioners and Notre Dame's athletic director met, it makes me so angry that this guy gets a voice at the table and everybody else has to be represented. Hey, it's Juck today. Marquise Davis pulls a shocker. Let's get it.
And I don't think he's going to throw the ball as much as he thinks he's going to throw the ball now that Chip Kelly's on board. And I'm happy about that. More quarterback.
The truth is Ryan Day has made a change philosophically, but it's none of those.
You all know who wins. LSU is the drunkest fan base in the country.
And welcome in. Appreciate you guys joining me today. If you are someone who was with me last show, we went live and it was a heck of a lot of fun. Might have been the most fun show I've ever done. It was really tough for me to do it, and I appreciate you guys helping me along. Some of the people who were in there that day were people who have been with me since the first week when we started 3 months ago with the show. And I appreciate you guys so much. And I know that you guys really like that format. So I want to do some more of them, and we're going to do probably 2 a week. And I'm going to pin down a day and say, okay, it's going to be this day and at this time, and we'll do it every week. I'm not there yet where I can say definitively, here's when we can do it, but I will let you guys know because I know a lot of you like that format. And hey, I do this to interact with other Buckeyes. And, if that's the way you guys want to do it, that's the way we'll do it. Even though I'm very scared of it. You got to get over your fears sometimes. But you helped me through the other day. I thought the show went pretty darn good. And if you're new to the show, we started 3 months ago. And I know that I always forget. I should do some more callbacks because we're up to close to 5,000 subscribers now. And I just assume sometimes people know what I'm talking about when I talk about something I said before, but that number doesn't stay still. It keeps growing. And that's a wonderful thing. It's a college football show. I'm an unapologetic Buckeye. No bones about it. This is a Buckeye show. But we talk about all college football. And I think my takes are pretty fair and reasonable, both about Ohio State and college football in general. They're backed up by facts 100% of the time, except when they're not. I'm not a reporter, but I probably operate it with a little more journalistic integrity than you're used to, which is not much out there. The Ohio State Buckeyes are the greatest program in the history of college football. I've got the data to back that up, though I created the criteria to make that data. I keep my language as clean as possible because it's my mom's favorite show, and it might be yours too. So welcome in. I'm thrilled to have you with me. Not my job. It's my hobby. I do it to interact with folks. So please leave a comment. I respond to 100% of them unless you're rude to me. So comment away or send me an email or follow me. Juck on Bucks at Twitter, Juck on Bucks at Gmail. I want to talk about everything. And I got a pile of things to talk about today because Michigan. Did you guys hear that? Can you? Something just popped up. I think it was a football highlight. So Michigan pulled a real coup, they thought, when they swung Tony Alfraud over to the dark side about a month ago now, maybe a little more than a month ago now. And they were rubbing it in quite a bit, bragging about what a great recruiter they had now and how they had really stuck it to Ryan Day and the Buckeyes. My favorite running back in this class, Marquise Davis out of Cleveland Heights, had a good relationship with Tony. Marquise is a shy dude, and Carlos Loughlin never really had a chance to develop any kind of relationship with him. And in recent weeks, it's become pretty clear that Ohio State was no longer in the running for him. He was essentially totally off the board. It was done. They couldn't get him. And Marquise was down to Kentucky, Tennessee, and most likely Michigan. Well, Marquise gave a surprise announcement today, and he committed to Big Blue, Kentucky Blue, absolutely hysterical. And the recruiting woes just keep on keeping on for Michigan. They are so upset, and they're tossing out all these, it must be NIL, go get your bag, blah, blah, blah. Listen, it couldn't happen to a better group of folks here. And I'm about to show you something here. So, you know what else? Mark Stoops down in Kentucky, Ohio dude, and Kentucky is a non-threatening team and a non-football school. So I'm happy for him. You know, I wanted Marquise. He was my favorite back in the class, but if he's not with us, I'm happy he's with Kentucky and not with them. Last night, I was watching Mark Rogers. Mark Rogers, the voice of college football. He's from Kent. He's a Buckeye fan, so I like him. And he had on a Michigan podcaster. Now, I reluctantly watched that show because sometimes I'm just a glutton for punishment. I had never seen this Michigan podcaster before, but I was pretty surprised at how fair this guy was. You don't see it often in this rivalry. Sometimes, believe it or not, I'm not even fair when it comes to this rivalry, occasionally. But this guy was very reasonable. He presented a lot of factual data. He even conceded that Ohio State, since the 1960s, is essentially the gold standard of college football, having never dropped down and never dipped, and everybody else has at least twice. Things you don't normally see for Michigan folks. So I was really impressed. I was so impressed that I was thinking, man, if I ever have a Michigan guy on during rivalry week or something, maybe I'll ask that guy. I really thought that. And then today, Marquise Davis commits to Michigan, and that fella tweets this. So he retweets Marquise Davis's tweet, and on top of it, get the bag and enjoy 10th place in the SEC, young buck. I mean, dude, that is so bitter and such a bad look. The golden rule is never tweet something negative at a recruit. They're not even 18 years old. It's kind of despicable. It's a gross look from a grown man. And that's just terrible. I would expect better from someone who seems like a reasonable individual last night. And I would certainly expect better from someone who does a college football podcast. That's horrible. Absolutely horrible. But his feelings were so hurt that he couldn't resist. And our running back situation got some good news, as On3 analyst, the one who covers the Texas Longhorns, has changed his prediction for modern-day running back Jordan Davison from Texas to the Buckeyes. Texas is seemingly out of the race for him. And stop me if you've heard this before in this recruiting class here. This is now a two-horse race with Ohio State and Oregon. Hearing that a lot lately, a whole lot. But I like where the Buckeyes stand with Jordan, particularly when we look at the current running back room at Ohio State. I think, and he probably thinks, he can come in his freshman year and get a whole lot of playing time. And I think he can too. So that's fantastic. The transfer portal is closed for all but graduate transfers. Now, the final numbers for the transfer portal this year, including fall and spring combined, 3,843 players are in the portal, but just 1,200 of them entered during the spring window, so much less than in December. Now, when we talk about impact players, 24/7 rates these transfer portal guys. Out of the top 100, just 11 of them entered in this spring window. Out of the top 50, just 3 entered in the spring window. So 3,800 total. Last year was 3,500 total. So not a whole lot of change from one year to the next. And the portal chaos that was predicted and pumped throughout college football, like for a month leading up to this, absolutely false, as just 11 of the top 100 players entered in this particular window. And I think a whole lot of that number, of those 3,800, when we look at the transfer portal as a whole, are guys dropping down a rung to go play and not waste their eligibility sitting on the bench, like we saw from some guys at Ohio State. So that's good news. I think that's great that guys are able to do that now and not rot their whole career away sitting on a bench somewhere. So good for them. And I mean, I think that this is a whole lot of egg on the face of a couple of people in the college football industry who were talking about this portal chaos we were all going to see. You sell things for clicks based off fear, and you look like a clown at the end of the day if you get it wrong. And they got it wrong. They definitely got it wrong. This was one SEC director of player personnel said trading backups is what he called the spring window. Trading backups. So the Buckeyes, an absolutely stunning display of player retention. They lose 3 more at the 11th hour, bringing the total to 6 total former Buckeyes in the portal. Dallin Hayden was the only guy with anticipated playing time this year to leave. I've made it clear how I feel about the Dallin situation. Not going to rehash that again today, but safe to say many of us saw that transfer coming, so it wasn't really a stunner. But I don't think any of us saw all 5 of these quarterbacks coming into next year together. Maybe we did halfway through this portal, but heading into it or a month prior to it, I can't recall hearing hardly anybody say, I think that all 5 of these guys are going to be on the roster next year. And that's what's going to happen now. I think it's amazing. I think it's absolutely amazing. I'm seeing a few people act like today they didn't see anybody transferring, but I'm just not buying it. I'm not buying it because I talked to a lot of Buckeye folks. And I mean, if you had the Buckeyes going into next year with all 5 of these guys on the roster, put it in the comments. I owe you a beer next time we're at a game together because that is an incredible prediction. It's really just a stunning job by Ryan Day and the crew. When you think about all the options that these guys had, even guys like Aaron Nolan, I mean, this guy could go. He's now kind of, to a lot of people, in the same class as a guy who's a phenom at Ohio State. He holds pat. Lincoln got a guy behind him who's a phenom. He stands strong. I mean, it's just crazy. Devin Brown, maybe on pace to lose another quarterback battle. He holds strong. It's impressive. I'm impressed with this crew of guys. And when we look even at last year when McCord leaves, a whole lot of talking heads thought that bringing in a transfer at that point, 1 in would have meant 2 or 3 out. And instead, 2 transfers came in Will Howard and Julian Sayin, and nobody is out. You can't explain this any other way than the culture at Ohio State, the brotherhood that they preach. It's not just a tagline. It's 100% legit. I really believe these guys feel like they're part of something. They feel like it's something very special, and it's something that they value a lot. And I'm unbelievably impressed with what Ryan Day and his staff have been able to cultivate at Ohio State. I think it's mind-blowing, and I don't think it's happening anywhere else in the country. Not only is this a great sign for this particular team, but it's a fantastic message to parents and players around the country who are coming up next. Plenty of folks are pointing out that must be a big money thing. Ohio State's paying all the backup quarterbacks to stay, which is just silly. Money plays a part in everything. There's no doubt about that. But there's money being offered to leave as well. We've seen almost all the other schools on Ohio State's level lose a starter from somebody going in and inducing them into the portal to pay them to come leave. That didn't happen at Ohio State, not with a starter, not with someone on the 2 deep. And Dallin, to me, is a totally different situation. But incredibly impressive. And I think most of us would imagine that some Ohio State players were approached trying to get them to come in the portal. Obviously, we'll never know. But it would seem to reason that if you and I were running another team and we were looking for some defensive line help, which we know was the hottest commodity this year in that portal, then you would want to look at a team where you would find some talented players who you didn't think were going to start. And number 1 on that list would be Ohio State. So pretty incredible. Pretty incredible. They want to be part of something special. They want to be part of the number 1 team in the country, which I believe when the season kicks off, the Buckeyes will be. I've been saying that for a long time. I was laughed at first. I'm still going to get laughed at by some today, but it's going to be less because we're seeing more and more outlets come around to that, including 24/7, who ranked the Buckeyes number 1. MGM Casino has now put the odds to Ohio State and Georgia winning the national championship as dead even. And now something I thought I'd never see last night, my buddy Uncle Lou, who's an absolute Georgia honk, kind of a Buckeye hater, but more likes to poke, very intelligent college football analyst. He had this to say.
I've got them number one. I think they are the most talented roster, top to bottom, in all of college football heading into 2024. If you look at what they brought back from last year, plus what they added through the portal, they are absolutely loaded at almost every single position group on the field. Again, I do have a question about Will Howard. I don't have a question about whether or not he's good. He's good. Is he great? I don't know. None of us know. I don't think it is. Well, let me ask you this. If you're an Ohio State fan, is he CJ Stroud? Is he Justin Fields? Is he as good as any quarterback you've had in the last 5, 6, 7 years, not named Kyle McCord? No, I don't think he is. Now, can you make that up in other areas? Defensively, toughness, whatever. We'll see. We'll see. But Ohio State's a really good-looking team heading into 2024. Georgia, questions there. Defensive line, that cost them in the Alabama game last year. They didn't do much to address it through the portal. They did bring in a defensive lineman or two, but no huge names. The bigger names went other places. Again, like Ohio State's quarterback situation, Georgia's got good defensive linemen. But do they have Jordan Davis? No. Do they have Jalen Carter? No. Do they have Trayvon Walker? No. They don't have these people. They just don't. They're not as good up front as they were during their 2 national title years. Can they make that up other places? Well,
so Lou goes on to break down Georgia. And again, this is the guy he's a Georgia guy. He knows Georgia better than anybody else I listen to. And I think that there's been this thing, and a lot of Buckeyes have it too. I can understand how it may happen, but it's basically this mindset that now that Saban's gone, Georgia is now just going to be the new Alabama. And while I love Kirby Smart, I think he's excellent. There's only one Nick Saban. And Georgia is not going to just start this run like we saw at Alabama. It isn't that. And I'm going to link that video if anybody wants to watch it. But he goes on to tell you a little bit more about what Georgia has some issues with. They're not a super team. They're not the team that won the last national championship. They're definitely not the one that won the one before that. And they got some issues, as does Ohio State. Neither of them are perfect teams. They're both clearly the 2 most talented teams in the country. And to act like it's ridiculous that someone could honestly look at both of those teams and say that Ohio State should be number 1 is the way people were acting towards me when I said that originally. That's just honest analysis. That's my honest opinion. I looked at both teams. I looked at what they have. I looked at where I think they have question marks. I picked the team I think should be number 1, and that's Ohio State. So there you go. Argue with your mama, as my buddy Lou would say. And again, I'll link that in the description. That is the guy who inspired me to do this show, to be honest. He's a fair dude. He calls it like he sees it, and even he's not afraid to call out his own team. He's excellent. So the spring portal ends, and the Buckeyes end up losing Enoch Vamahi, Dallin Hayden, Jahad Carter, Nigel Glover, Cedric Hawkins, and Keon Graves. I mean, honestly, outside of Dallin Hayden, these are a lot of names I don't think normal Buckeye fans would even know who we're talking about here. And that's okay, man. These guys, they deserve to go have a chance to play. So I'm happy for them. Now, that number, if you add it to the fall of total Buckeyes left, is 19. So 19 head out of the program this year, which to me is the sign of a healthy program, as all these guys are looking for playing time elsewhere. And off the top of my head, Chip Trainum, Julian Fleming, Dallin Hayden. It's really the only 3 guys I can think of that actually played at Ohio State that could get significant playing time at Ohio State that left. And, they all had Chip's still kind of a mystery to me. I'm not quite so sure why Chip left, but, with Julian and with Dallin, you understand why they left. So Nigel Glover was a 4-star Ohio high school football player, started at Northwestern before he transferred after Pat Fitzgerald got fired for the Northwestern scandal. Interesting that him and Jahad Carter the other day, Glover, 2 guys who had already transferred once. And it seems to me, I think we're seeing this a lot in this spring window, is that almost like once you crack the seal and transfer once, it makes it easier for you the second time. And I suppose that can kind of make sense. Going to a new team isn't easy. Once you do it once, maybe it's just an easier process for you. but I think we're seeing a lot of it. And that's not great. Wide receiver Keon Graves, he was a top 100 guy almost in the class of 22. Buckeyes took 4 receivers that cycle, and Kojo Antwi is the only one that remains. Wasn't a very good wide receiver class, Brian Hartline's worst. But Keon Graves was towards the bottom of the depth chart in his 3rd year at Ohio State. He logged a total of 16 snaps last year. Enoch Vamahi, the GOAT of the Cotton Bowl, and not GOAT as in like greatest of all time, GOAT as in like old people talk, like the guy who messed up. My kids don't know what I mean when I say that. Maybe that's just something my grandfather said. I don't know. Anyway, he was the guy that screwed up in the Cotton Bowl. He was a former borderline top 100 recruit as well out of Hawaii. Definitely never lived up to the expected potential with the Buckeyes. And the game against Missouri showed that he was just out of his league at the highest level of college football. And that's okay. It's very rare to be a starter at a blue blood program. I wish him the best. By all accounts, he's a really nice dude. Pretty unreal that Justin Fry said he was one of their 5 best last spring. I don't know how in the heck that could have happened, but he had 2 starts in his career. The first one, he was yanked after a quarter against Michigan in 2022. And the second, the biggest coaching malpractice I've ever seen out of Ryan Day, when he started and remained in at right guard with Matt Jones at center in the Cotton Bowl. He was a swinging gate all night, and Matt Jones couldn't make the calls. Not either of their faults, in my opinion. Not everybody's physically capable of doing what they're asked to do on the football field, and Enoch Vamahi was not. It's on a coach to know that and see that and adjust. But, that's not what happened. Maybe that game was necessary to get the full effect that we had this offseason. It might have been. I don't know. But a lot of people call it a meaningless game. I don't think it's meaningless. If we're lining up against an opponent and the country is watching, I don't think it's meaningless. If a guy like Cade Stover, who was advised by his agent not to play, says, I got to play because I can't sleep at night if I don't play with my bros, I don't think it's meaningless. It wasn't meaningless to Jack Sawyer or Devin Brown. Ryan Day coached it like it was meaningless, and that irritates me big time. Anyway, enough about that. It happened. It's over. It's done with. And with Enoch Vamahi gone, I will have no more reminders of it. Just one more thing. 5 to 6 more first downs on offense in that game. And I think that the defense could have pitched a shutout. All they needed was a little bit of a breather. All right, that's it. I got to listen to the SEC clowns a lot. And remember, I got to post these videos sometimes across social media platforms, which means it's not just Buckeyes seeing it. It's other folks. I've heard more about that stupid Cotton Bowl than you could believe. It's amazing. And I've had to argue that all it was the offensive line switch. That's it. They're not going for it. Anyway, as it currently stands, the best estimate I've seen on what the roster scholarships are at is 82. Of course, we don't have a definitive number on that because it's not a number that's public. They can tell us what it is. They usually choose not to, and we know how Ohio State is with making things publicly available. They keep stuff very close to the vest. And, you can understand for some things. For other things, it seems kind of silly, particularly when you're very nosy, guilty. Vamahi leaving has the Buckeyes with 8 tackles and 8 guards on the roster. And I know offensive line play doesn't move the needle a ton, but I think we should hit on it because it is the most questionable group on the team. And I think we all agree on that. So that's another roster spot that they can use for the line. The portal is full of a lot of developmental kind of linemen. Do they want to go that direction? They certainly better not want to go with Bruno Fina. Bruno Fina took Buckeye Twitter by storm yesterday. The transfer portal is hilarious. So whenever somebody enters the transfer portal from either a powerful school or a position that Ohio State fans think the Buckeyes may need, everybody goes insane. And Bruno Fina was flying around Twitter, and it took all of maybe 15 minutes for some of my friends to send me his PFF grades, which showed this poor guy is literally almost dead last in all of FBS at pass blocking. I mean, dead last. So no thanks. Then we find out later he's leaving UCLA because he was losing his starting spot. He's only got 1 year of eligibility left. And while people can improve, they can't do it in fall camp from worst in the country to worthy to play at Ohio State. I refuse to believe the state of the offensive line is down that low. So, no thanks on Bruno Fina, even though I like his name. So, is it transfer portal? I think it's more appealing to get another lineman in the class of 25. They won about 3 or 4. I think they should definitely go 4, which means 3 more on top of Carter Lowe. But with the way the class of 25 has been going on the offensive line as far as recruiting, I don't think they should just throw a body on there for sure. I mean, they're dropping down the board pretty hard, and they're headed out of state to do it. One local guy that we've heard has made an absolutely incredible leap, both physically and athletically, is Jake Cook. He has a Louisville, he's a Louisville commit. He's out of Westerville North, 6'5", 295. He was at that Canton camp, that Under Armour camp over the weekend with Eli Lee and Justin Hill. And people at that camp were absolutely blown away by the leap he's made, both physically and athletically. He's put in a ton of work. He's currently a 3-star. I talked to Jake. He said he doesn't pay any attention to the ratings anymore. He's been developing and working hard the past year, changing his body around. So we'll see. I'd like to see him get that offer. Jake said he thinks he should get that offer. When you hear that out of a local guy who's made big strides, that's awesome. Jake's a Louisville commit out of Westerville North, 6'5", 295. He was at that Canton Under Armour camp with Eli Lee and Justin Hill over the weekend, and people at that camp were blown away by the leap that he's made both physically and athletically. He's put in a ton of work. He's currently a 3-star. I talked to Jake, and he said he doesn't pay attention to the rankings anymore. He's just been developing and working hard the past year, changing this around. So we'll see. His words. I'd like to get him that offer. Jake said he thinks that they should offer. And when you hear that out of a local guy who's made big strides and is as physically talented as, at a minimum, 2 of the guys that I've seen them just offer recently, I want him. I want them after him. And with the way the roster management is currently going, losing 19 guys off this roster, I really don't see why 5 linemen every year isn't the play anyway. Shoot your shots at the best of the best. Lock down the best in state and in the Midwest. Now, class 26, luckily, has a lot of Ohio high school linemen who are in great position to get Ohio State offers. Number 36 overall prospect in the country, Maxwell Riley from Avon Lake, 6'5", 265. Top 100 prospect, Sam Greer out of Hoban, 6'8", 290. A guy that's so incredibly nimble for his size, and it really shows on the basketball court. In most classes, he'd be rated much higher, but he's the 11th rated tackle this year, or in 26. It's such a deep lineman class, not just in Ohio, but all around the country. Also in the class, another Ohio stud, 4-star, 200 overall, Adam Guthrie from Miami Trace, Ohio, and Washington Court, 6'7", 285, just turned 16. I talked to Adam, and he said Justin Fry came and visited his school a few months ago, and he went down on a game day last season. The fact that this dude's just 16 at 6'7", 285, him and Sam Greer, I mean, that's a heck of a combo from Ohio. Absolutely love that. We also have the number 275 overall lineman in the country, Will Conroy from St. Ignatius, 6'3", 275. He's been down 4 times to visit at Ohio State, and he's growing a relationship with Justin Fry quite a bit. The other day, I was discussing the lack of offers from Justin Fry. The class of 2025, Alabama, Michigan, and Georgia all have twice as many offers out as Justin Fry and the Buckeyes. Linemen in the country have 8 out of 10 of them have offers from Alabama and Georgia, and only 2 of those guys have offers from Ohio State. It's just like, I don't understand the strategy here. I really don't. And he is recruiting behind all of his peers on the staff. So when you got a blueprint laid out, right, and you can say that there is a blueprint laid out by Alabama and Georgia when it comes to offensive line play, like one of two things is happening here. Either he's just being lazy or he thinks he has a better way to do it. Either way, I disagree, right? All right, so as luck would have it, I've got an answer to my question. Last night on Talking Stuff, that's Jeremy Birmingham's show, he brought this up and said that he had a poster at Rivals who was asking him this question. So he went and asked around Ohio State. And the answer is, it's an intentional strategy. Fry is outsmarting Georgia, Bama, and Michigan. They feel like if you cast a narrow net, you're going to have a tighter bond with the kids, and they're going to feel more prioritized and more special. So Fry intentionally casted this small net. But there's a problem with this strategy, and that is when you miss out, you have very few places to pivot. You end up scrambling and making offers that you normally wouldn't make because you didn't offer enough guys in the beginning. Listen, that offer to Josh Petty, for instance, absolutely going nowhere. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Josh Petty's got 7 official visits. That's the 5-star from Georgia that everybody else has been in on forever. He goes and offers him last week as if that was going to go anywhere when everybody else has already made all this around with him. Like, I thought that it was about the relationships that matter and that close bond. You think you're just going to pop in here now and come get Josh Petty?
I was taking a final in the class, and Kirby Smart landed his helicopter on our back green, and it was awesome. That was one of those surreal moments where it's like, wow, you always hear about Coach Smart landing these helicopters at these places, and now I'm one of the kids that he's doing that for.
Seems to be going against your philosophy. Anyway, man, my hope is he pivots off this strategy in 2026, because when you've got teams that do this very well and you don't, and you're coming from UCLA and you see how they're doing it, you don't need to be the smartest guy in the room. The blueprint's laid out. Just follow the blueprint. There it is right there. You've got the block O on your chest now. You can do it the same way. Anyway, Alan Trio of 24/7 recapped that Canton Under Armour camp that we've talked about the last couple of days here. And when we were talking about it the other day, I had got a comment from Mika in the chat asking if I thought Ohio State linebacker commit Eli Lee was underrated. Eli's currently a 3-star and ranked something like 540th in the country. And I got a really good example of just how underrated he is. So this dude is recapping this camp, right? Now, Eli Lee's known as a run stuffer, 6'3", 220, a sure tackler, incredibly strong, not the best athlete, but very good. In these kind of camps, they are not very conducive to a guy that has Eli's strengths, right? These are agility, in space, speed. And Eli won the MVP of the whole doggone competition. So this guy recaps it, and in this article, he's discussing the participants. Justin Hill is the alpha dog, according to him. Top of the page. No problem with that. That dude's amazing. So I keep reading down, and I'm reading about the participants, and I'm about halfway through the article, and I'm wondering, does this dude not see Eli Lee? Eli Lee was there. He was the 16th guy. I counted because I couldn't believe it. The MVP was number 16, the 16th guy discussed, and it wasn't in alphabetical order. And honestly, I love it. I love it because as much as I hate it, he's a competitor, and he's a very high-level athlete being underestimated. And this is how his whole recruitment's gone. And if it weren't for Laurinaitis and Knowles being so damn sharp, this guy would be a Wisconsin linebacker from Ohio that we would be looking at in a couple years, absolutely furious that they let him out of state. So anyway, he's going to get him, man. I love that kid. Speaking of 24/7, it's not often that we have a really exciting Ohio quarterback. And watching Luke Montgomery and Tavian St. Clair rise the way they have has been a whole lot of fun. I'm definitely someone who, when all things are equal, I feel the program should always go with Ohio players. And honestly, there's been times when I've thought an Ohio player maybe was a little bit below a national player and still wanted the Ohio player. Just because I hate that some classes have, there's some classes we've had that have had maybe 6 of 24 guys from Ohio. And like, that's something that I think should be avoided at all costs. And I was arguing about this. I used to argue about this quite a bit with guys who would say that it doesn't matter. And I don't get that a whole lot anymore after these last 3 years against Michigan. Like, not too many people argue that it doesn't matter anymore. I don't hear that much. But we're relying on the coaches to teach these out-of-state players what it means to be Ohio State Buckeyes. And part of that's the rivalry, and part of that's the history. And these are the best players in the country who are coming to Ohio State in large part, many times, to be developed for the NFL. And those other things will always take a backseat to that. We understand that. So unless it's ingrained in the culture of the program front and center, and you do that by having as many Ohio players as you can, particularly the leaders. And that's why I love having an absolute beast of a quarterback who is a leader front and center in this class. Tavian grew up wanting to be a Buckeye. He's the absolute perfect Ohio State quarterback. And I still can't get over that Ohio produced the quarterback in the class of 2025 for the 2 best programs in the country in Ohio State and Georgia. That's nuts. But I think Tavian Clair is going to be the number 1 overall prospect when it's all said and done. And I had a discussion about this the other day. And the fella I was discussing it with thought that Bryce Underwood had distanced himself with a great performance in that Orlando 7-on-7 tournament that we talked about last weekend. Tavian didn't do so hot. And to be quite honest, I was a little concerned myself when I saw Bryce Underwood's highlights and heard the way people were talking about him, that maybe that was going to help solidify him with the number 1 overall. Not that that number 1 overall means everything, but doing that with JJ and then having that with Tavian in back-to-back classes would send a hell of a message, and it creates a lot of momentum in recruiting. We've seen how this works with recruiting. These guys see it, and they want to be part of it, and that's just the way it goes. It happens like that with the recruiting crown, and that's why I think that's so important to try to capitalize in, because the Buckeyes are in position to do so. You're not always going to be in position. They are this year. So that 7-on-7 was Tavian's first time in a club tournament. He's done those tournaments in state. And it took him a while to warm up. He didn't do great. So anyway, I'm having this argument with that guy. And I see this clip drop from 24/7 as I'm going to find a clip that I showed on the show. And it was the 2 guys at 24/7 the week prior talking about Tavian St. Clair gaining momentum. Well, this one pops from 24/7.
Surprise if other people corrected, and he moves. There's some chatter starting about a potential change at the top. Tavian St. Clair, this is a kid that we really, really like. He's got a prototypical frame. He is all of 6'4", 220 pounds, and he's got a really loose stroke, and he can touch all different corners of the field. I loved him at that Elite 11 regional, and then when we see him at this OT7 tournament, I thought there were some encouraging things. He did throw some interceptions, but you have to remember Tavian St. Clair, because of those Ohio High School Association rules, he's never really played 7-on-7 football. He told me this was his first ever club tournament. He's only played a few with his high school, and those were normally at Ohio State. So, there were some peaks and some valleys, but overall, encouraging performance, challenge tight coverage windows, made some high-level throws, and he's going to be at the Elite 11 finals this summer. Hopefully, we're going to see him and Bryce Underwood go at it there. But yes, I do think that there's potentially, room for change at the top. Tavian St. Clair sitting in the top 10 for us in the rankings. We're way higher on him than the rest of the industry. I would not be surprised if other people corrected and he moves up their board. But Tavian St. Clair, Ohio State's getting a really, really good quarterback. There's some chatter starting about it.
Anyway, does anybody know if Urban Meyer's a good golfer? He won himself a golf tournament this weekend. He was paired with Mike Norvell, and I'm feeling like maybe Mike Norvell carried him. I just can't picture Urban being a good golfer. He's so intense, and it's almost like if he isn't good at something, I can't see him wanting to put the time in to get good if it's something frivolous like golf. It just doesn't seem to me like he's ever had the time or wanted to do that. Maybe I'm wrong. But there was a golf tournament with a bunch of current and former coaches, and it was the 2024 Peach Bowl tournament. 24 current players and coaches, and Urban Meyer and Mike Norvell won in a playoff against South Carolina head coach Shane Beamer and Houston Nutt. The competition was 12 two-man teams, $300,000 purse for the charity of their choice. Urban said, "I'm a big fan of the Seminoles today. We played well and ham and egged it all day." Now, I don't know what that means, but my audience is 96% dudes and it trends older. So if any of you guys can tell me what ham and egged it means, let me know in the comments. Urban Meyer said, Mike Norvell could hit the ball 310 or 320, so every hole we were in position. Certainly a much better result than last time Mike Norvell was involved in one of these bowls. A couple of the pairings that caught my eye, Kirby Smart and Tommy Tuberville. That's some good old Southern boy jabber right there. I'd like to listen to that one. Steve Spurrier and Dave Doran. Playing golf with Steve Spurrier would be pretty high on my list of, I don't know, if I could pick 10 things in college, 10 personalities in college football and one thing to do with them, Spurrier and golf would be on there for sure. How about the most annoying pairing of the tournament? PJ Fleck and Dan Mullen. Oh, man. And the grumpiest, Pat Narduzzi and Chan Gailey. These guys, their personalities all kind of match here. It's pretty interesting. But the pairing that finished almost dead last, you got to feel bad for them. Jim Grove and Dan Lanning. Oh, you hate to see it, Dan. You hate to see it. Speaking of Dan Lanning, the Oregon fans are getting quite cocky, and I've made it clear what I think about that program and the direction that program is headed in. I'm not going to get into it today, but the long and short of it is Oregon is going to be the biggest pain in the keister for us over the next 5 years. That's what I think, both on the recruiting trail and on the field. But their fans are getting really cocky. Their last recruiting class, they were able to flip Jeremiah McClellan, a wide receiver committed to us who was the third best wide receiver in the class. And this year, they're really confident that they're going to flip Blake Woodby, the third-rated corner in our class. Very distant third. Losing either of those guys isn't a huge deal. You can certainly see why, if you are number 3 in your class at a position, it would maybe look appealing to you to go be number 1 somewhere else. So it's not a huge deal, but it's not nothing either. Nobody else was able to do it, right? So the Oregon fans are quite confident in that. They're also quite confident that they're going to get Trey McNutt, who, I'll be quite honest, I think is going to come down to Ohio State and Oregon for his decision. And to me, that's a 50-50 proposition for him right now. Plenty of time to talk about that later. But I also feel like Justin Hill is going to come down to Ohio State and Oregon. And we just heard that Jordan Davison is coming down to Ohio State and Oregon. You know, I know I piss some of you off when I talk about this. I'm just telling you, man, like this is getting for real. Okay. It is. These guys are getting for real. So, all right, let's talk about the playoffs here. So last week, all the FBS commissioners and Notre Dame's athletic director, dude, can I tell you, every time I do a story on this playoff, and I have to tell you that all the commissioners and Notre Dame's athletic director met, it makes me so angry that this guy gets a voice at the table and everybody else has to be represented by the athletic director of a conference, and Notre Dame's athletic director has his own seat at the table. I can't stand it. Anyway, Ross Dellinger reported on this meeting that happened between all of these commissioners and Notre Dame's athletic director. And they were there to do a little exercise. Now, in this exercise, they were going to sit around and do the rankings for the playoff using the 2020 season as their template. So they wanted to see how the bracket would shake out using the 2020 rankings with today's rules for the playoffs that are coming up. And when they were done, they allowed a bunch of reporters to come in and do that same exercise. And the goal was to look at any potential matchup trends, any issues, etc. College football director Bill Hancock guided everybody through the process. Now, let's refresh on the format. So the top 5 highest ranked conference champions get automatic bids. So the Big Ten, SEC, ACC, Big 12, and the highest ranked group of 5 conference championship auto bids. The highest ranked 4 of those get the first round bye, which usually means that the group of 5 champ will not earn the bye. Then the next 7 highest ranked teams get the at-large bids to make up your 12-team playoff. And those rankings will not be AP rankings. Those will be done by the College Football Committee, just like we've seen them do to get to the 4 teams, right? So that's the same committee that's going to be doing these rankings. In the case of the 2022 season, the first round games, which would be held on campus, would have looked like this. Number 8, Tennessee, hosting number 9, Kansas State. Number 5, TCU, hosting number 12, Tulane. Number 7, Alabama, hosting number 10, USC. And number 6, Ohio State, hosting number 11, Penn State. And obviously that Ohio State-Penn State game is a rematch in the first round. And currently, there's no protocol to avoid rematches in the first round. And that's not great. In the last 10 years, using this format, they went back and found that there would have been 7 first-round rematches from a game that was played during the regular season. SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey admits that there's a lot of rematches, but he evaded questions about a protocol being added to prevent such things from happening. It's an issue. Part of the fun of this playoff is getting to see more meaningful cross-conference matchups. That's why I'm excited for it. Rematches are going to happen. There's no way around it. But you want to save them for the second round or later on. You don't want them happening right out of the gate. Another issue that came up is lower-rated conference champions getting a bye over a conference runner-up who's higher rated. So let's say Oregon is in the Big Ten championship game and they lose by a point. Their only loss of the season. West Virginia is the Big 12 conference champion, but West Virginia has 2 losses on the season. So Oregon's obviously going to still be ranked higher by the committee, but West Virginia is going to get the bye ahead of them. Now, the Big Ten and the SEC wanted to guarantee byes to their schools. And I think they went a little overboard by saying that they didn't want the ACC or the Big 12 to have access to any byes. I don't have a problem with the Big 12 and the ACC having a bye if they're the higher-ranked runner-up. I'm sorry, if they're the higher-ranked team than the runner-up of the Big Ten and the SEC. But I don't know why we're pretending like the ACC and the Big 12 Conference Championship means the same as the Big 10 or the SEC Conference Championship. It doesn't. We all know it's not the same. We all know that the runner-up of the Big 10 and the SEC 8 times out of 10 would beat the Big 12 Conference Champion. And as we move forward, without Texas and Oklahoma in that conference, a little refresher for who makes up the Big 12. Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, Utah, Baylor, BYU, UCF, Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Iowa State, Houston, Kansas, Texas Tech, West Virginia, TCU. I love this conference. I love it because it's incredibly evenly matched. And for the most part, those are all schools that really support their football. They're good football schools. There's plenty of teams in there that, you know, they care more about football than some of the Big Ten schools, right? There's a ton of teams on that list that care more than the Purdues and Indianas of the world. But there's no killers in that conference. It's a conference full of kind of second-tier football schools. And the number of times that we are going to see the SEC or the Big Ten runner-up being ranked ahead of that champion of that league is probably 80%. But that runner-up in the SEC or the Big Ten is always going to have to cede that bye game to them. I mean, we talked that there is only – this is a huge disadvantage for the Big Ten and the SEC right now, the way that's laid out. Because there's only one way that you can play 17 games in this playoff, and that's playing in your conference championship game and losing. So if you're a team that plays in that conference championship game and loses, you are still ranked ahead of the Big 12 or the ACC championship, and they get the bye. Huge disadvantage for sure. Pretty messed up, man. That Big 12 champion who won that conference championship, now you got to play 4 more games to get through the playoffs instead of getting that bye. But it's also pretty messed up to say that the Big 12 champion who won their conference championships, hey, now you got to play 4 more, even though they won their conference championship. I mean, it's messed up either way. So I don't know. I really think they should go with the rankings, though. A little compromise here. The conference runner-up, if they're ranked higher than a conference champion, I think they should get the nod, because winning the Big 12 is not the same as making it to the SEC or the Big 10 championship game, in my opinion. It's just not. It's much harder to make it to the SEC and the Big 10 championship game and be the runner-up in that game than it is for that Oregon or that Ohio State team to win the Big 12 if they were in it. It's sad but true. The thing is, they're just not even, Steven. We're talking about a different level of football. And that brings us to the G5. The G5, this is the biggest problem here in this playoff. So in 2022, Tulane was the highest ranked group of 5 champ, and they were ranked number 16. They would have pushed out the 12th ranked Washington team that year out of the playoff. In 2019, the highest ranked group of 5 team was number 15 Memphis, and they would have gotten the bid and pushed out Notre Dame, Penn State, and Utah all out of the playoffs. In fact, there's only 3 times in the last 10 years that the group of 5 team was ranked in the top 12. In 2015, Navy would have gotten the auto bid, ranked 21st in the country. Last year, 23rd ranked Liberty pushes a team out of the playoffs. I mean, that's insane. But not only is this ridiculous, it also gives whichever team gets the luxury of playing that group of 5 champion, I don't want to say a bye, that's awfully rude and presumptuous, but an easier first round game than anybody else has. I think there's going to be sufficient momentum the next time they restructure this, and they're only doing this every 2 years, so that'll be soon. The group of 5 needs to have a harder route to get in. Giving them an auto bid, I just totally disagree. And you also have to look at the group of 5. When we used to talk about the group of 5, like, they're missing a lot of their big dogs now. We talked about the Big 12, like the Houstons, the Cincinnatis. There's a lot. SMU is now in the ACC. A lot of those stud group of 5 teams that had the ability to pop up every now and again, they're not in the group of 5 anymore. They're up. Imagine this. A team that's not ranked in the top 25 with a guaranteed playoff spot. It's happened that the highest ranked group of 5 conference champion was unranked. It could happen again. An unranked team could push out number 12 Penn State. I mean, it's just like, that's crazy to me. That's crazy. And I don't care if they have their own playoff. There's a lot of people clamoring for the group of 5 to have their own playoff. I would watch it. I watch the Division III and the FCS playoffs. They can have it or they don't need to, but we need to stop pretending that they can compete, or that including them in this is somehow some pat on the head, like you did just good enough. Look, you made it. It's all about inclusion. The G5 doesn't belong in a playoff with Ohio State and Alabama and Georgia and Oregon and Texas. It's just ridiculous. It really is. There's a whole lot of talk going on about how they are going to restructure paying players this week. There's a lot of hurdles to jump over and a lot of details to get negotiated, but we're definitely seeing a whole lot of momentum towards players getting compensated from the schools. Thank goodness. A proposed new revenue sharing model expects schools to share as much as $15 to $20 million per school, with a spending limit similar to professional sports teams' salary cap. The amount per school was based on an average of the athletic department's revenues at the same figure for all schools. That's a definitive advantage for a school like Ohio State with the #1 athletic department in the country. Anything is better than the current way we got this payment thing structured here. I did a video about this not too long ago, and somebody said to me, "You're an Ohio State fan. You want NIL to stay. Your school is cleaning house, you idiot." As if the only thing every college football fan is concerned about is how it affects their own school. That's not my viewpoint. I think NIL is horrendous. The way I want to rephrase that. I don't think NIL is horrendous. I think the way NIL is being orchestrated and operated is horrendous. NIL was never supposed to be about, I'm going to pay you to do this. It was allowing players to sell their jerseys and sell their autographs and use their name, image, and likeness in commercials, etc. I think that's fantastic. I think just saying, look, the bottom line is it's horrible. This is way better. Give them a piece of the revenue that they actually bring in, and they're moving towards the right direction here. So it's fantastic. It's going to take a while. The big question is who's going to represent the athletes at the negotiation table when they get here, right? Well, there's a group called athletes.org, and athletes.org is trying to be the group to represent the players, because when you look at, like, who are we going to pick? Let's say, I don't know, who's a leader in college football? Well, last year, maybe somebody would have said Michael Penix. Okay. Michael Penix. Well, now he's gone. Now who? It's not like the NFL where somebody can be a respected player and then he's there for 5-7 years and he can be that player rep. But this organization is trying to get schools to sign up, players to sign up with their organization to be the representative for them. And UAB, the University of Alabama, Birmingham, coached by Trent Dilfer, has signed with this athletes.org organization. And Dilfer let the whole team vote on it. They decided to sign up with it. And then Dilfer came out and made some statements. And it was some serious grandstanding, though I don't agree with him or disagree with him. Dilfer said, I think this is a revelatory time for college football coaches. It's going to reveal if they are about their players or about themselves. It's not bad if they're about themselves, but the players are going to know. Dilfer told his players, you guys have followed conversations in college football. People are going to be making a lot of money, billions of dollars. How much are you going to get? The actual money that's negotiated for you to play on TV. You're not getting none of it. So who's getting it? The conference, the institutions. I'm one of the few people who believe you deserve some of that. Okay, Trent. Listen, NIL doesn't happen unless the public supports players getting paid. The movement for players to be able to make money has been a steady groundswell for decades. This dude up here acting like he's the only one in favor of this is absolutely ridiculous. And I usually like Trent Dilfer, but that's goofy, man. That's goofy to try and act like that. Yeah, NIL doesn't happen without public support. It absolutely doesn't. So Dylan Gabriel bought uniforms for his high school in Hawaii. So Dylan Gabriel is from Hawaii, the same high school as Marcus Mariota, which is why he has permission to wear Mariota's number 8. And I think that's pretty awesome. But check this out. Dylan Gabriel, if you didn't know, has 50 starts under his belt, 5-0, for a total of 14,500 yards with 125 touchdowns, just 26 picks, and a 159 career rating. So 5 years, 50 starts under his belt, and he is a doggone good quarterback. So kudos to him for being a doggone good quarterback and giving back to his folks on the island of Hawaii. He doesn't look so Hawaiian. I didn't realize he was Hawaiian until I heard that he was from Marcus Mariota's high school. Don't know how I missed that. But he started off as a pretty hot quarterback at UCF, and then he went to Oklahoma. Now he's on his third school. And the professionalism of quarterbacks in particular is something I just can't stand in college football right now. But, it is what it is. I don't know if that's ever going to change. All right, guys, that's my show. So I appreciate you joining me today. It's Thursday morning. Why don't we do a live show on Saturday or Sunday? Let's do the weekend show live. I'll probably pump out a little something for you for Friday, but then I want to do the weekend show, live show. Not quite sure if it's going to be Saturday or Sunday yet. Have to check my schedule, but I usually like to do a weekend show every week, and this weekend we're going to do it live. So I will make sure I set your little alarm bell on. If you're still here, I know you're a fan of the show. So set your little alarm bell on, and I will pump out in plenty of advance notice after I find out exactly when we're going to do that live show for the weekend. And I hope you guys are there. We're going to have a great time. We're going to go as long as you want to go. We're going to just kick it all night or all day, whenever we decide. So, all right, guys. Everything available on podcast. Please like the video for me. I'd appreciate it a lot. And I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Chuck on Bucks out.